Hey everybody, this is a lecture on citation style. It's tedious, but you just have to deal with it because if you get this wrong, it's going to hurt your grade. So you really have to focus up. So what I'm going to do is uh, when I send out the announcement later today for this podcast, I'm posting a URL. It's the Broward College Library. It's something I just found online. I thought it was a very simple and effective way of showing you how to cite books and journal articles, etc. It doesn't really talk about newspapers, so I'll talk about that on my own. So um, anyway, I want you to cite your primary and secondary material correctly. It's really important to me. I want you to start becoming comfortable with citations, that when you look at a secondary source, that you're comfortable looking at either the endnotes or the footnotes. Remember, endnotes and footnotes are all under citation. Just footnotes come at the bottom of a page, endnote come at the end of the document. Um, and hopefully now, when you all look at either footnotes or endnotes, it's not obscure to you. I would guess that for most of you it was obscure. What the heck, those small, the endnotes and footnotes citation usually come in smaller letters, and there's parentheses and italics, and oh my gosh, what is that? I hope now that when you look at citation, you know what's going on. And as I've said to everybody, think about citation, whether it be endnotes or footnotes, as a dialogue that the author is having with you. And the author is telling you, hey, this is where I got my material, so I'm not making this stuff up. And if you want to double check, here's where you go. And I think most people understand that about citation. What a lot of folks don't understand about citation, and I hope that you do now, is that citation is a dialogue between the author and you, where the author is telling you, hey, if you're interested, let's just say Susan B. Anthony's trial in 1872, I think it was, which a couple of y'all are doing, but I think everyone knows about that trial. That hey, this is the information that I've gathered on the trial, and here's some secondary sources. Here's what historians have written about this. Here's some primary sources at the time. And I can't stress to you, when it comes to primary sources, let's say someone, we always say New York Times, but you know what? You have access to hundreds of newspapers, not just the New York Times, through the historical newspaper database, through the Library of Congress. But anyway, so let's just say that an author cites an article in the Chicago Tribune, June 1st, 1872. What I urge you to do is take a look at that site. Pull up the Chicago Tribune on June 1st, 1872, find the article on the trial on Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and take a look at it. And see if there's information on that the author didn't use. And one of the things I don't think I've stressed enough, but I guess it was implicit, but I want to make it explicit now. What you're learning in this course is very transferable. The techniques you're learning in this course are transferable to any history subject, okay? So that's why we're stressing these kind of techniques in this it's very technical. What I'm stressing here, what we're stressing in the 2003 classes, but that's okay. This is what creates different kinds of professions, right? Different kinds of techniques, different kinds of protocols. You might think of citation as a protocol as well. Now, here's one difference though. If you're studying, let's say you're studying, some of y'all are taking Dr. Hardgrove's course on India. Well, historical newspapers in the US are not going to be very useful if you're studying India. So in that technical sense, what we're doing in this course is not transferable. This is a very US-centered course. But that shouldn't stop you. JSTOR covers articles on India. Project Muse covers articles on India. There's dissertations on a subject in India. There's books. There's articles. So, but when it comes to specific primary sources, When you do non-US, you have to search a little bit harder, but that doesn't mean they're not there. You just have to kind of figure out how to access those sources. So I've just come to believe over teaching 2003, especially over the last couple of years, that if students come out of the class comfortable with citations, knowing what citations are, what they do, what you can use them for, how to cite correctly, that's not a small thing. I used to think everybody knows how to cite. Well, I realized a couple of years ago that very few undergrads know how to cite. Why would you? It's a very technical kind of knowledge. It doesn't mean it's difficult. It's not difficult. It's just you have to be really precise. You have to focus on what you're doing. But it's not hard. You just have to focus. So I've just come to believe that citation, correct citation, being able to read cites, being able to find sources from secondary sources, especially other sources from secondary sources, being comfortable with looking at endnotes or footnotes and realizing what you're getting from that bit of information, that it's a dialogue between the author and you. If you come out of the course realizing that, comfortable with reading citation, which I think very few of you came into the course comfortable with looking at citations, I'll be pretty happy. That's a big goal of this course. That's a big goal of this course. So so that's the first podcast, and now I'm going to break it down into kind of smaller bite-sized pieces. What I want from you by next week is I want your final topic choice. I want your primary and secondary listed, and I'll talk about what I want there. The databases that you looked at. So we're ending this section of the course. I've talked to, except for one student, I've talked to everybody. People seem to be in good shape. And in the rest of the podcast, I'm going to talk exactly how I want you to present this information, because also presentation is very important to me as